Wow, this comment is so fresh. It came in as I was making the last video that I just recorded, which was talking about how sometimes there is and sometimes there isn't a difference between cultural identity and ethnic identity. All right, so this comment came in. It was on a video I made called DNA Test Results. How much DNA, Jewish DNA, do Jewish Americans have? Mo Flow for Show had this to say. Quote, Larry David got 97.8% Jewish and Bernie Sanders got 97.7% Jewish. So basically almost identical there. So definitely possible to get a very high percentage even for Jews born in America, end quote. So thank you for that. I didn't realize that. Of course, we all know that they look a lot alike because right, Larry David played Bernie Sanders on Saturday Night Live. To me, they just look so much alike, it's hard for me to tell them apart. And they're both Jewish Americans, and they're both in their 70s. So that's interesting. It's interesting that they have such a almost basically the identical amount of the same DNA, Jewish DNA, and then they happen to also look alike too. So that's fascinating. That is so much of, because I talk about that a lot on this channel. It's rare to be that much of anything, actually, especially as an American. We've been so mixed up. Of course, you know, I'm half their age. You know, if they're in their early 70s and I'm in my mid to late 30s, you know, somebody like me is going to be a lot more ethnically mixed, likely, which my mom's 15% Sephardic Jewish, by the way, according to her test. So I just think that's interesting. It's interesting that Larry David and Bernie Sanders look so much alike. They're both Jewish, and they have basically the same amount of Jewish. And I will say this about both of them. I knew they were Jewish before I really even knew who they were. I wouldn't have known that either of them were Jewish by looking at them. Neither of them, to me, look Jewish. They just look like older white men. I would have not have known. Even the name Bernie Sanders didn't ring a bell to me that'd be Jewish, because I grew up with the guy. His last name was Sanders, and he wasn't Jewish. So I didn't even know that was a Jewish last name in itself. So I just think that's fascinating. That's a lot of Jewish DNA. That's a lot of DNA of anything. And it's funny that men who have the same amount of Jewishness look so much alike. They're Jewish, though I wouldn't have even thought they looked Jewish. Maybe, and I thought I had a pretty good eye for it, but sometimes they get thrown off. Like Jeremy Miller, the guy that played Ben Seaver on The Growing Pains. He was the Jewish actor on that show. I've said before, there's always a Jewish actor on every 80s and 90s sitcom ever, and he was the official Jewish actor on that show. I talked about basically Home Improvement and Family Matters are pretty much the only ones that didn't have somebody that was Jewish on there. So anyway, fascinating to me. Thank you for sharing. I like learning. You know, for you to watch a video like this, you have to be as obsessed as I am about ethnic background. I think it's so interesting that we can, in modern day, really track down what makes us up. Now, in the end, does it matter? No, but it's fun to figure out. We couldn't do this 30 years ago like we can now. 30 years ago, someone could say, yeah, I'm Irish because my last name is O'Donnell. Today, we're like, no, you're not. Take your DNA test. And then it shows like 12% Irish, and then it's like 50% German. And then they realize, oh, I'm not really that Irish. That was just my last name? Yeah. So, any thoughts on that? Comments? You never know. I might make a video in response to your comment. Oh, yeah.